a snowy evening here in Davos. We're in conversation with Nigel the global CEO of Publicis and Sapient, a digital business consultancy firm. Thank you very much, Nigel, for talking to us at Moneycontrol. I want to begin by asking you about, what businesses have in mind when it comes to digital transformation. Is it about AI these days? Because that seems to be one of the central pillars at Davos as well.
I mean, AI is definitely the theme of Davos this year, but fundamentally transformation for a lot of companies right now still goes back to the core issues of how do I drive more growth? How do I become more efficient in my organization? How do I deliver better products, services, and experiences to customers? And transformation in that sense is probably the biggest deflationary force for so many organizations. So you can actually deliver more with less, kind of drive more growth without incurring as much costs. AI in particular, I think, has a big role to play specifically in the context of tasks that were historically not technology enabled, specifically things like complex decisioning, like in banking as an example, credit decisioning or risk has had AI in parts, but now you're starting to see entire ecosystems where you look at where loan origination happens and you look at how mortgage distribution happens entirely on an automated basis based on learning and training of models that institutions run.
Right. So when you talk to enterprises today, what is top of mind for them? Because, if you look at the Economist Outlook, WEF's Economist Outlook, they're still talking about a very uncertain world because of geopolitics, AI. People in India are bullish about the economy, but world over, there is a sense of pessimism. They expect growth to weaken. So in such times, would transformative projects really be top of mind? Or it's, the putting the lights on business, the regular spends that people have in mind? Because even if I look at IT companies, discretionary projects haven't really come back in full force for them.
Absolutely. And I think that you're absolutely right? So we live in an uncertain time. There's lots of volatility. You've got macroeconomic uncertainty. But in all of this, I think people are asking themselves, if we don't transform now, then when, right? Because there is a risk that when the market starts to come back, if you haven't actually started to make the pivot to really shift your business, to embrace digital, which is essentially, when you look at countries like India, the entirety of the new generation of consumption is happening on platforms that are digital.
That's right. So leapfrog.
Correct. So if you don't orient yourself in that way and fundamentally not just incrementally move by keeping the lights on, but really shift how you do business, I think there's a huge opportunity cost to doing that. So a lot of companies that we're talking to understand the financial pressures that they have to operate in the short term, but are also prioritizing what they believe is existential in the context of their transformation.
Right. Nigel, I also want to ask you, when you talk to clients, I mean, even at Davos, you were telling me that, you're chock-a-block advising people on what to do. Which sectors are showing a sense of urgency when it comes to digital transformation? Which sectors are reluctant to make that change? And again, in terms of geography, which companies in which countries see the urgency to change? And how do you see companies in markets like India?
Yeah. So if I start maybe with the latter part of your question with countries and geographies, right? We've certainly seen the United States with the Fed raising rates at an unprecedented level, slow down, but now starting to pick up, right? Because of that. The interest rate cycle is actually turning and the macroeconomic environment outlook is turning. And so that's starting to shift. When I think about digital generally, I think if you look at Asia as an example, they're leapfrogging huge aspects of what the West has already done. So you are seeing the shift to mobile, and the shift in terms of adoption of data and AI.
And in India, you have
the UPI and the public infrastructure, which is phenomenal, right? So you are seeing huge leap forwards like that. But if I think about the West, I think the primary focus right now there is basically saying, how do we ensure that we deliver more growth with less? And that comes through embracing a faster digital future. So your question on industries, right? So if you just look at industries, take groceries as an example as a category worldwide. The fastest growing sector of grocery is online grocery. Grocery as a category overall is pretty static. When you start to look at financial services, almost every large bank is on some journey towards becoming a fintech. whether that's in the retail banking space or in more complex arenas like trade finance, payments, trade finance, all of these, right? Because these were heavily paper-driven, large process-driven, and now they're moving to smart, intelligent, automated. So you are starting to see that shift happen pretty rapidly. And most of the industries that are further ahead are consumer-led. So by and large, if you think about industries like travel and hospitality, things where people have been urging change, they've been further ahead. When I think of industries like health as an example, they've got some catching up to do. If you think about industries like that, they haven't really adopted how we as consumers have integrated with consumer-led companies in the way that our healthcare is managed, which is of course different by country. But when you start to look at industries like that, they've got further to go.
Right. And what are the 1 or 2 trends that you see taking off in, a 1 to 2 year timeline in terms of transformation? Because even when we talk to people in AI, they say it's really too soon to determine which way this is going to go, even the impact the generative AI is going to have on enterprises very early in the cycle. So, in such a scenario where you're seeing the pace of transformation evolve so rapidly, how does one really craft a strategy? Because you're crafting a strategy and tomorrow something can be launched and your entire strategy might go for a toss.
But I'll give you an example of I think how companies have benefited already now, right? There are some core fundamental building blocks that are enablers to AI, no matter how this conversation goes. So often when we're talking to companies and folks say to me, I need to talk about my AI strategy, right? My first comment is, let's talk first about your data strategy. So let's understand where the underpinnings are, because if you've actually established a really solid foundation to ensure that every aspect of your organization's data is being harvested, you understand how to train models using it. We were doing AI for clients 10 years ago in machine learning and then predictive AI. And now, of course, we're talking about generative AI. But the fundamental building blocks of how you use your data, how you establish models, how you develop test and learn cycles, we often talk about these capabilities as speed capabilities, and speed is an acronym for strategy, the S, product. So moving from projects to products, the E is experiences, and the next E is engineering, and then the last is data and AI. So this idea of the speed framework, we think about them as fingers on the hand. And I often say to people, look, it doesn't matter what you're trying to lift and shift or move or pick up. You need all your fingers functioning together, right? And, if you don't have 1 or 2 of them working with the others in concert, it doesn't matter what you're trying to lift or shift. You're still going to struggle to move something from point A to point B. And that's, I think, where we are with AI. I think now with generative AI, you're starting to see creative industries start to come into the fore, because we've moved from predicting outcomes to now creating, which is a big shift, right? But as we go forward, I start to imagine what we will move to is a world where we will start to look at things like the human body or organizations in almost real time. We're working right now with healthcare organizations where we're analyzing every single bit of data coming out of a patient in a hospital and alerting doctors on a predictive basis to potential illnesses the person will have based on how their physiology is responding to various drugs and reacting. So, I think if you start to play this out, the biggest thing for an organization is, have I got a strategy to harness the data in my organization? And do I have the ability to react and respond in real time, potentially using AI and models to do it, but even in some instances, enabling people to be empowered and superpowered using that same data.
Right. On that note, thank you very much, Nigel, for talking to us.